Hey everyone, this is Terrified of AI with the third interview in the series, and I'm particularly excited about this one because one of my first encounters with the group in the Discord was a late night session that included our guest today, Full Port or Bust, and he's one of the two people, him and Alloy, who changed my meme name into a real a real thing where I'm actually scared of AI now. But all jokes aside, um, I bring a decade plus of financial professional experience to the table. But what I don't bring is experience with trading and charting and technical analysis, which is why this series and After Hour as a whole really intrigues me and why I want to interview a lot of the community members because it gives me and others a lot of insight into the people who have been really successful on the platform. So with that, I just want to thank Full Port or Bust for coming on to this interview and sharing his insights with us.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, man. I'm excited about this series. This is really cool you're doing this.
I appreciate it. So I'll just give you a second to introduce yourself, give a little bit of background as much as you're willing to share before we kind of hop into some of the questions.
Back in high school, I moved out from, or I grew up in a very poor family. It was the type of poor where choosing between what we got to eat for dinner and putting enough gas in the car was a pretty common strategy, and having to like balance those two. And when I graduated high school, I moved out with $48 in my pocket and five trash bags of clothes, and that was my entire empire. That was everything I owned. Um, I went to college. I paid my own way through college. I was able to get some help from friends for places to stay and things like that. But forged my own path through, got a career, and then I bought a house, lived there for a while, sold it, and kind of decided the grind wasn't enough. I wasn't satisfied with it, and so then I moved over into trading, and I've been doing that for a couple of years now.
Awesome. Are you doing trading full time or do you have other things like a full time job and this is something that you do kind of during the day along with that?
Uh, right now, I'm trading full time. Yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, the way that I usually start these interviews, and I'd like to keep it kind of similar structure, but we're going to try to keep today a little bit shorter, um, just for time's sake. I know hour-long interviews can be uh, long. So, just like to start off with the kind of beginning journey for investing. What inspired you to start investing?
So what really inspired me to start investing was after or mid college, I was talking to my dad, and he's been really big in the market. He's a big market enthusiast, I should say. He doesn't actually trade. And I was sitting down watching with him one day, and I got to watch the flash crash in real time, which was the auto traders ran away with the ETFs, and SPY dropped something like 20% in about an hour, and then quickly came back. But that got me really captivated by the whole thing. And I made a couple dabbles in trading then, but online trading really wasn't what it is now, and it was very labor intensive, time intensive, and I wasn't having good results. So it's only recently here that I've rediscovered that love of trading and gotten back into it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Are there any specific kind of books or more guides or anything that helped you kind of forge your knowledge before you started getting into the group of after hours and diving into trading more?
Um, Not really books. I kind of have this philosophy that anybody who is selling trading knowledge has not found their maximum profit in the market. They have found their maximum profit in selling information about the market. So, kind of intrinsically, I don't trust anybody who has anything to like in a published media, there's just this layer of dubiousness about anybody who has anything published about the market. I understand that some people genuinely want to publish books, but I go in with a layer of skepticism that just kept me from really pursuing those. And my entire experience has been firsthand knowledge, learning how others trade, and I mean, reading articles here and there about different patterns online and reading about different facets of the market online.
Gotcha. So more of kind of looking for experienced traders to learn from rather than diving into a book or anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's my experience has been the people who know how to trade and are profitable trading are too busy making a profit trading to bother trying to make profit anywhere else.
I can't argue with the logic there. It's pretty sound in my in my opinion. Um, Especially with the way that it works in the Discord. For anyone who hasn't been in there, I'd encourage you to stop by there from time to time. I personally can't get involved with that just due to my role in my career. I can't trade like that, but it is wildly entertaining. And for either you or someone else is usually kind of live streaming their trading and making money with people at the same time. And people are learning, and it's a pretty great experience.
Yeah, I definitely like the After Hours community for that. It's been a great place to learn about trading. It's been a great place to have a lot of my theories tested. It's also really cool, this kind of underdog movement that's been happening with retail traders of we finally have not necessarily the trading information, but we have the knowledge dissemination that makes retail traders be able to trade in a way they never have before. And I think it's amazing.
Completely agree. It is interesting, I think, with all the technology and kind of APIs and availability that's out that you're not much behind from a data perspective than what Wall Street's using. I mean, they have access to some stuff we don't, but not as much as it used to be for sure.
Yeah, and something that really kind of galvanized me on the After Hours community is seeing stocks start to get mentioned that were not like really caught anywhere else. And then it was like four or five in a row. I saw just people getting really emphatic and enthusiastic about them on After Hours, and then I would see them rocket. And I immediately was just taught by the community. I'm like, okay, there are people on here who are really good traders. It definitely is. I'm very selective about who I try and pay attention to, but the average talent, I would say, on After Hours is much higher than I've seen in other communities.
I would agree with that. I think that I mean, as it grows, that talent pool will return to the mean, I think. However, I would say I'm also selective with who I follow, just because
This is
I don't want my
something,
feed clogged.
yeah, this is something that I think is kind of unique about After Hours is SIRJACK is very, very focused on quality first, quantity second. And I really like that approach. Um, There's also a focus on openness and transparency that isn't in the other market or isn't in the other communities. Wall Street Bets is kind of the meme example, but a lot of people would post on Wall Street Bets and say, "Oh, look at this trade," but there was no way to guarantee it was an actual trade, and it could have been they backdated their, they're back testing something and did this trade against a simulated account on a back tested stalker. In which
Yep.
case, what that means is they literally know exactly what's going to happen, and they just put the right numbers in at the right time to make it spit out the right number.
Yeah, or they paper traded it because it was way too risky to do it with real money,
Yeah,
and it's just fake.
yeah,
So
and then they show the paper trade account, but they, very carefully crop below the big red banner across the top that says it's paper traded.
exactly. So I I think this is a good opportunity since we already started going down that path to talk about the after hour community before we get into you personally. So how did you find after hour?
I came across After Hours when I was trying to really enhance my trading. A lot of my stuff had been buying holds, and I was looking at it, and I was happy with the amount of money I was making, but I wanted more, and I thought I could do better, and I was seeing other traders do better. So I was trying to find other resources and other people that would help me be able to really take my trading to the next level. And After Hours was one of the groups I came across that had it. And the thing that drew me to After Hours when I was looking at the app was there was no paywall. And that was, again, coming back to that, people who are good at trading don't need to take money in from other places. They're so good at trading that the other places just aren't worth it. And a lot of the other apps that were saying they had trading advice or had trading knowledge or had trading education were charging. And that immediately turned me off of them, not because I'm cheap. I'm happy to pay money for quality goods. But what really turned me off of it was nobody who's good at trading needs to sell information.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that that's one of the key things as well. Just the transparency, and it seems like the first people he got in to After Hour to start the community were almost, for lack of a better term, vetted to make sure that the leaders were there for when people came in. At least that is the appearance when you see the largest accounts on there. Seems like they've been there for a while and they really know what they're talking about. So,
Definitely. And something that I think is really cool about the After Hours community is there's a really wide variety of different trading philosophies represented. So if you don't like trading in a particular style, you can follow other traders that match your style more closely. And that is something that I don't think you're going to find across a lot of strategy or a lot of communities where there are different people making side by side, different people making different money side by side using different techniques, but they both look at each other and they go, "Cool, you're making money too." And that's kind of the end of the discussion. I think that's really unique to After Hours to have that kind of relationship between users where there is no right way.
yeah, it's almost like Wall Street bets, but respectful, which is like,
I don't know if I'd want to call it anything close to Wall Street bets.
that's true. That's
My
true.
experience
Maybe,
with Wall Street bets was it was lots of zero analysis,
yeah,
zero reason for doing anything. Someone just shouting that this stock was good, and then they come back days later and they say "told you so," posting a 500% gain. There
that's true.
wasn't
Yeah,
there
maybe not
wasn't the
quite
same
Wall Street
level of
bets.
conviction. Yeah. Wall Street Bets seemed more like a place where people who were making money were showing off as opposed to a place that was educational and insightful, which is much more what After Hours is.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think that's correct. Um, One of the questions I have for you is how do you think After Hour has impacted your trading strategy?
Oh, so much.
And
Meeting traders.
we'll dive more into your trading strategy in the next kind of segment of questions. Just kind of briefly, how do you think After Hour has impacted that?
Yeah, so Alloy was kind enough to mentor me for a little while in my trading, and he really helped take my trading to the next level. He was offering a lot of insight into like a whole different dimension of trading that normal retail traders don't look at. And these are he was looking at it from the perspective of a market maker, and the market makers are the ones who move the stock price. And it really unlocked a different dimension of trading for me. Um, it's also exposed me to some really amazing stocks that I've been able to take profit on. I dabbled in RXRX is kind of the first one that comes to mind. I never would have looked at MicroStrategy. I didn't personally make any money on MicroStrategy, but that was where it first popped up on my radar and where Bitcoin got back on my radar. So it's been really insightful as a way to like help be more aware of the market as well. Uh, and that awareness is really a piece that just is, I think, particularly unique to After Hours.
Awesome. And you started off the next question already with Alloy. Um, uh, I agree. I think that when you hear him speak, and I don't want to hype anyone up on the app too much, right? But when you hear him speak, it's respectful from a place of knowledge, but he listens as well, which I think is a unique feature that I think he's been really good for the Discord. But is there anyone else, um, whether it be in the Discord or just through After Hour in general that you have either menteed from or taken knowledge from or anything like that?
Um, so my mentor does have an after hours account, but I haven't actually checked with him to see if he's okay with me mentioning it. I it's something I really would kind of like his permission on because he has some pretty strong feelings about after hour and I want to be respectful of that. There are a few other traders that I think are really good and have different styles. Color of Cash has some great insight and it's kind of weird watching him because there's times where I read his posts and I'm like, are you me? It seems like we both come from kind of similar walks of life, kind of facing similar challenges
Well, you
and
started the
doing
interview the
similar
same,
things.
by the way. You started the interview with a very similar story. So right away, I made that connection. So it's interesting to hear you bring him up.
Yeah, Ferrari Fund is another one I particularly like following. I'm kind of just rattling these off the top of my head here. There's another guy, he doesn't post very often, but when he does, his posts are absolute gold, and that's Apple Bottom Jeans. Apple Bottom spelled like the ticker
Yep.
AAPL. He is another guy that really, really knows his stuff. Um, when I start seeing some of these people who are the way they trade is, these are people who have backgrounds with they're managing a hedge fund for a bank and they're posting this kind of information. Those are the kinds of people I want to expose myself to. I, ref- Let's change that wording. These are the kind of people I want to be sharing a community with, is the types of people who make really, really insightful trades based on really good information. Um, Prison Mike for Prez is another fun one.
I love
Let's see.
watching him. Just in general, his posts make me crack up, and they're usually they're the best of both
Oh
worlds, I
yeah,
think.
he manages to take profit in do it in an entertaining way, which I really enjoy. There's another one who's been kind of a sleeper. I caught word of his account. Um, I was looking at the like discovery feed, and this guy had like 3 posts when I first saw him. But the way he phrased his posts, I was like, this guy knows something. And that's Jensen Boy. Jensen Boy is a really insightful trader. I don't know a whole lot about his background. I haven't dug very deep into it, but Jensen Boy definitely knows his stuff. So those are a few, and of course, Alloy. Alloy has experience working with banks. Rephrase. Alloy used to work as a trader for a bank. And the significance of that to me is banking is the oldest business, period. It is the first like actual industry that got established was banking. And because of that, banks have been around for millennia. They don't make mistakes. And so for Alloy to come from an experience of working for these entities that do not make mistakes because they have literally thousands of years of experience making money, that really, I listen to what he says when he has something to say. And when he disagrees with me in particular, I'm listening very carefully.
Yes. It's it's interesting to hear. I mean, I've been a fly on the wall when you guys have those kinds of conversation, and it's all the interesting thing is it's there in today's world people can get very defensive, but neither of you when you have those discussions, and I think a lot of the after hours community, not just you two, but I'll use you two as an example, it's almost like back to having normal discussions where it's not I'm right, you're wrong. It's this is the information I have, this is the information you have, and then either you talk it through and agree, or you meet in the middle somewhere, which is very refreshing, just kind of with how society is today in general. So,
I feel that too. And I think part of it ties into the good trader mindset, which being in the right frame of mind to trade is really tricky. Part of it is you have to be incredibly convicted on what you do. And you have to be able to convince yourself to say, this stock is only going up. Like right now, at this very moment, the only direction Q can move is up. And that takes a high degree of conviction to be able to do that. Simultaneously, you also need to be the type of person that when someone walks into a room and you're saying, I believe, I know for a fact that Q is coming up, and they say, well, have you taken into account this? And you need to then be able to challenge your opinion on that and reassess everything you thought you knew. And having that blend of flexibility and conviction is not easy because they have to sit side by side. And the big thing I would tell anybody who's trading is leave your ego at the door. It doesn't matter what you think should have happened. What matters is what did. And focus on that and allow yourself to be wrong, allow yourself to be right, and allow new information to change your mind.
Agreed. Yeah, I talk to people all the time about the markets from a different perspective from a trader. But what I'm telling them all the time, almost daily, is one, the market doesn't care about your feelings, and it doesn't care about what you thought you knew. Um, and it's almost blunt like that. It is what it is, and you have to check your ego. So I completely agree there. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. The market is a most of the trading done on the market is done by machines. They're not even aware of your feelings. They're looking at their algorithm and executing trades.
exactly. In just a couple of sentences, what are some of the things that you would say to someone just joining After Hour and um, dabbling for the first time into the community?
There are three things I think new traders should keep in these are the three things that I see this mistake over and over and over again in new trading accounts. My mentor says paper trading makes millionaires. I know it's exciting to make money. This is a mistake I made when I first got into actively trading as I was so excited to actively trade. I started playing with real money and yeah, it felt good getting wins, but when I had a 50% drawdown on a single trade, that kind of sucked. So paper trading makes millionaires. Only trade in a way that the number one goal of trading is not to make money. It's not to lose it. The number one goal is to not lose money. And so when you're paper trading, until you get to the point that you're not losing money on trades, continue paper trading until you get there. That's number one. Number two is don't risk what you can't afford to lose. I see people come in all the time and a trade goes sideways the very first time they trade with real money. And they go, I just blew this money and I was counting on it. And don't count your money before you make it. It's really easy to get into this and say, oh, well, I'm going to be up 50% on this trade, and that's going to give me $20,000. I'm going to be able to go out and I'm going to be able to do this. You don't have the money. It's not realized profits. It's imaginary. That's all in your head.
Yeah. Oh, quick
Number
aside before
three.
you get into number three.
Yeah.
Just short story about that. I keep telling this story, but it seems to be relevant every interview that I do. Is I remember that question gets asked a lot by people joining, and one day in the Discord, you and Alloy at the same time, someone asked it, and you were like 1%, and I was like, I'm making a soundboard of that, just both of you saying it at the same time because it's the same answer every single time, which I think is also one of the great things. It's consistency of advice. It's not changing depending on how you're feeling that day. So
Oh, yeah.
completely agree.
So there's a couple different ways of expressing the same thing, but generally, the amount of money you stake and how risky that thing is to stake that money on should be inversely proportional. So, buying a house is pretty safe. The stock market, I mean, the stock market has oscillated, but the real estate market in general has only gone up on a long enough timeline. That just happens. Real estate is a very, very safe market. If it's not up this year, you can wait a couple years and it will be. It it's a very, very safe market. So staking heavily into real estate is a fairly safe bet. Going into the Magnificent Seven stocks is also a fairly safe bet. So it's okay to lean more heavily into those because if they're not up this week, give them a little bit of time. They'll probably be up in a couple months. All you need is a little bit of patience and you can walk away with money. And this is where you start hearing those mantras people say of it's not timing or it's not when
Yeah,
you get in
it's
the
time
market,
in the
it's
market,
time in
not
the
time in
market.
the market.
And that's a very retail trader centric phrase, because most of the people who make really, really big money on the market are in there for minutes or seconds. They go in, they execute their trade, and they leave. So the idea is, if you ride an ETF, or if you ride a Mag 7 stock, yeah, you will make money because they appreciate over time. It does put an upper bound on how much you can make, though.
Yes, agree. But I think for your money that you're not, for safer money, I think there's kind of a yin and yang to it where you have to have your money where that's what you're doing. And then on the flip side, it's okay from a trading perspective to take those higher risk plays for minutes or two or three times a day to seek that alpha that you're looking for.
Absolutely. And the riskier it is, the smaller amount you stake. And then the idea is you harvest those earnings and you transfer those earnings into more secure places where they will grow more steadily. So when you cap your entry into something as risky as day trading options at 1% of your portfolio, the most you stand to lose is 1% of your portfolio. So you can do that for a month before you start seeing like noticeable damage to your portfolio. You can go in 1% every day for a month and not see like noticeable damage to your portfolio. If you roll in hard, you can lose everything in one trade. The the other thing is, 1% in, after you make some money on that, you can then keep the money you had originally staked and play with house money, the money you got from the market. And you could turn that 1% gain into, or that 1% you staked, you could turn that into a 5% gain in one day if you had a really hot day. That is possible. So it constrains your downward movement. It does not constrain your upward movement. And that is the big thing about staking very small amounts on any one position.
Awesome. Sorry to derail the conversation. What was number three, if you remember?
Number three is leave your emotions at the door. Uh, this is another mistake I see traders do all the time. I get in arguments with traders about this. They go in and they say, "Oh, well, everything I know says it should have gone up." And I said, "Well, it went down. You were wrong." And they go, "No, I wasn't wrong. It shouldn't have gone down." I'm going, "Well, the fact that it did says you're wrong."
Yeah, you
Like,
missed something.
yeah, leave your emotions at the door, and also be able to look at both wins and losses really callously. I see a lot of people, they struggle with fear of missing out. I would say the number one thing that is going to keep a trader from making money is fear in general. Fear of missing out, greed. I consider greed a form of fear. But all of those emotions you need to leave at the door. And the time to enter the trade is when the strategy says to enter. And the time to exit the trade is when the strategy says to exit. That is the part that matters. And it doesn't matter how much money you made. It doesn't matter how much money you, I mean, it kind of matters how much money you lost. You should have your limits in place for where you will take profit and will take loss. The important piece is leave your emotions at the door. So when you look at a stock and you say, "Oh, well, I made 50% the last time I traded MicroStrategy. I'm going to trade MicroStrategy again." That's an emotional response. You're not assessing it objectively. You're assessing it based on what happened last time. And it's really important to leave your emotions at the door. Don't get envious of others. Don't get greedy. Don't worry about missing out on a big gain. I can guarantee every day there's a stock that jumps at least 200% in price every
Almost
day.
every day. Yep.
I mean, every day. I've checked it. Like, I have yet to check in and have it not happen. So, I mean, when we had that really bear day after New Year's, the thing that was weird is we only had two that were up over 200%. Normally there's 30 or 40 that are up like that. So there's always money moving by you. All you got to do is be able to stick your hand out, grab some, and pull it back in. Don't worry about how much money is being there, because there is trillions upon trillions of dollars traded monthly.
Awesome. So I wanted to get into you personally a little bit more in your investment strategy. So there's two real things that I want to talk about here first. But anyone who knows you and has talked to you or been in the Discord with you or follows you recently has noticed that you seem to have found what a lot of traders call their edge, which is kind of their strategy that they've made their own or adopted as their own. Um, and I've kind of seen it just in the past, I want to say, what have I been here? 1, 2 months really manifests itself for you. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about that because it seems exciting for me to watch and you seem very excited about it.
Oh, I am so excited for this. The way I've put this together. So I'll talk about trading strategies in general. And this is something I is part of leaving your emotions at the door is when you make any trade, your trade should be based on a specific strategy. That strategy is your rules for entry and exit. It's what you're looking for when you get into a trade. It's what you're looking for when you get out of a trade. It doesn't matter what your strategy is. The important part is trade a winning strategy. Don't trade a winning trade. If you have one that goes down because just something happened, that's fine. If your strategy is generally successful, continue trading that generally successful strategy. When your strategy starts to have flaws and you're not seeing the performance out of it you like, go back to the drawing board, reassess it, tune it, then go back in. And there's likely to be a little bit of lag. I've found there's some lag where I'm still paying for pieces of my strategy from a month ago that need improvement. I'm still paying for it now. I've got bad trades that I'm still working on exiting and things like that. So it does take time to transition over. But the important part is focusing on good strategy. So what I personally have gotten into is options open interest. And I think I would be happy to talk about this in more detail a little bit later, but it is kind of like its own thing. That's been my edge right now is paying a lot more attention to how options are traded.
Yeah, let's talk about. I want to spend like 5 minutes on that, just where you kind of tell me tell the
Yeah.
audience what that is and how you've adopted it into your strategy.
Okay, so options are contracts which represent rights to buy and sell property or rights to buy and sell stock at a particular price. You can have options on other things. I have sold options for cars I have had listed where I said, okay, I will take $1,000 down and you have right of first refusal at this price. And I sold the car to them, but regardless of whether or not they sold the car, I kept the money. So I shorted a call on my car. Actually, I guess that's technically shorting a put. The I've also, I mean, if you've bought property, the house going under contract is an option. That is a form of option. So the idea is options are these contracts that have flown out into the market. And when a contract is sold or bought, and somebody has it active and in their possession and hasn't executed it yet, that is open interest. So Friday, or not Friday, Wednesday, we saw Q get down to 508, I want to say. The number doesn't matter. The important part is it got down to a certain threshold, and a whole bunch of people had puts. And what puts are is a right to sell stock at a particular price. So if I have one of these options, and I'm sitting there and I have a 510 put, let's say I have a right to sell the Qs at 510 and I see the Qs at 508 and my contract expires today, I have a lot of compelling motivation to go out and buy the stock, or excuse me, execute my option, buy the stock at market, execute my option, sell it at 510, take my profit and leave. That is guaranteed money. All I got to do is push the button. So what options interest does is it creates this buying pressure and selling pressure at particular prices. And the market gets down and it starts hitting these levels. And when it hits these pressure points, people start executing their options because they're now profitable. And that drives the stock price in the other direction. It also creates these, I'm sure everybody's seen this where it's like a stock is just rocketing up and it goes up and up and up. And then it's like it ran into a wall and it
Mhm.
just skates sideways for days. And nobody understands why. And then all of a sudden it goes back up. That is open interest at work. That is people executing the calls they have, selling the stock at market price, executing their calls to buy it below market price, and generating selling pressure. And so by paying attention to where this pressure is, you can see really good times to enter and exit the market. And you can also see whether or not people believe, rephrase, whether or not market makers believe the stock will increase in price or not.
Yeah, it makes when I first heard you explain it, because this is not the first time I've heard you explain it. It it almost makes too much sense. That it's like
So,
how is this the first time I've been hearing about someone using a strategy like this? I'm sure you're not the first person, but it makes so much sense.
it does. And you're right. It almost makes too much sense. And that's because the market makers are these financial institutions, and they don't lose. They've been doing, I mean, they've been trading in the stock market since the stock market was a thing. They know what kind of movement it's look at, and they've been part of that strategy ever since it came and went. So what market makers are doing is the way you should be trying to trade, because this is the way to trade that has been proven to make money. And that is shorting contracts that are out of the money that you have secured, making the money off those contracts. And then in the case of big financial institutions, they have enough cash that if too many of those options they've sold start to be in the money, they can buy or sell stock to drive the price to where they need it to be.
Which is crazy to think about. But yeah,
Oh, yeah, it is wild. I remember I was sitting one night and I was watching, and there was an auto trader going loose on the queues in after hours trading, and somebody was trusting with this bot, flipping $3 million a minute. It was
crazy.
insane. It was just scalping with $3 million over and over and over again, and it was at it. I think it's still running. I mean, of course, it's still running, but yeah, there's tons of money from these people. This is one of the big ones. One of the big trades recently was Citron shorted MicroStrategy, and a whole bunch of people got really upset over this. And this was part of why I said leave your emotions at the door, is everyone had this conviction that MicroStrategy was going to go up, and Citron said, we don't think so. And they executed this big short. And part of that was a head game, as they were trying to get in the head of retail traders and say, oh, well, it's not going to go up. And then they did something that drove the price down, which incites a panic. And so that drives the price down more. It's a force multiplier when
Yeah.
they say something like that. So I went back and looked at what they were assessing. And I found myself initially kind of pissed off when I heard what they did. I'm like, oh, they were just propaganda, and there you go. There's nothing to this. They were just market manipulating, and they made money that way. And then I went to prove it to myself, and I realized they were right. MicroStrategy was trading too high. And in reality, it was like the more I looked at it, the more I realized how careful that execution of that trade was. And it's, yeah, they shoved a lot of money into the market to short that many shares. It's a really popular strategy to short shares and buy it later. And it's really, I mean, these, to give an idea of how much money is in the market, at one point, I found myself looking at Bitcoin futures options. So this is a little weird because it's speculation on speculation
Hmm.
and leverage. One of these contracts, a single contract, a single option, was trading for $125,000. There had been $10,000 or excuse me, there had been 10,000 options of
Oh,
this one
holy fuck.
position traded.
Excuse
10,000
my language.
options for this one position had been traded since market open, and that was 2 hours before. So this one futures option position, like QQQ 512 July 5th, for example, just making something up. That's what we're talking about. A single future contract, future option for Bitcoin had over $1 billion in volume since market opened.
Wild.
And that was, I mean, there were hundreds of these options for this one future. So it's insane the amount of money that's flowing back and forth. And I'm really not exaggerating when I say trillions. I think that's actually an understatement. If I remember right, I saw a page once that had this listed, and it was actually like tens of thousands of trillions. The numbers got so big they had to start talking about them weird in order for them to make anything close to sense. It's a stupid amount of money flying by at any time.
Hmm. Awesome. Anything else to say about this edge that you found?
Um, I am still refining this. It
Mm,
is entirely possible that I've gotten into this and I've started having some really early luck, and this may go very sideways on me. And I may just have been lucky. And I've had strategies have this happen before, whereas I got lucky with the initial strategy, and then I had it. I it worked right up until I started actually committing some serious money to it, and then it just went sideways on me, and I started losing money like crazy. So this is still very early, but it is very promising.
yeah,
Um,
it's exciting for sure. One, I think
it's very exciting. Yes.
because it seems almost so logical that it's really easy to get behind from a concept. So that's to me what is exciting about it for you, and you've been doing a lot of stuff around it that I'd encourage people to look at some of your kind of recent posts, I think Tuesday and Wednesday, where you laid it out for people and you show people in the Discord all the time. So I think if people want to learn more about that, they should hop in the Discord at some point or just comment on some of your posts. You're more than open with your with this strategy. Um,
Oh
but I
yeah, and this isn't hidden information. It's just difficult to find.
yeah,
But once you find it, it's going to rock your world. And all of a sudden, price movements are going to make a lot more sense where you're going to understand why Tesla goes up to 135, or excuse me, NVIDIA goes up to 135 and then acts like it's rubbing its face along a glass wall and then ricochets back down to 130. And you look at the options open interest and you go, oh, the positions are 135 and 130. Like it all of a sudden just explains why the stock is moving the way it is.
I I agree. I think it's so logical that I feel like we have to move on just because I'm just going to keep saying how logical it is. Um, the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about that I find wildly is interesting are both the after hour portfolio that you've been running and I think you're still running, and the hype man portfolio. Uh, to me, they're one of my favorite things to look out for in after hour, just because one, they're unique to after hour and they're exciting and they perform at, maybe up until a couple days ago. Thanks, Jensen.
I mean, this wasn't Jensen. We
I
had
know.
been seeing this drop since before Jensen.
Yeah, no, I'm just memeing him. But how did you come up with those strategies, and what led you to execute and test them?
Yeah. So they weren't really. I mean, Hype Man was a strategy, and Hype Man has made some people stupid amounts of money. I see people going as hard into Hype Man as they are, and then they come back and they're like, "Oh, I'm up 300% in the last 2 weeks." I'm like, "What?" So there's some people that have made really well doing Hype Man. And It was a day where I was, let's say, less than sober and also had been less than successful trading that day. There was no overlap between those two. I had had a really frustrating day. I was trying to blow off some steam. And in my very incoherent, very non sober thinking, I was like, what if I just bought the ones that moved the most? And I started doing that. And all of a sudden, I started seeing insanely good results. And I was like, I saw plus 10% 2 weeks in a row, and I was like, all right, we're funding this guy. And then it was again, like plus 15, plus 10, plus 7. Like it was just up week over week. And it had 7 consecutive weeks of nothing but profit before it had a first day where or first week where the portfolio actually exited flat. That had been the worst day on record, was a 0.2% loss on Hype Man over a week. It was stupid. And it was entirely just based on the idea of FOMO into the trade. Uh, find the ones that are the big movers and buy in and hold it for a little while and then get out. And I chose the week rotation because it seemed to be the hot movers had about a week of steam in them before they would flatten out.
Yeah,
And then the after hours portfolio is something that anybody could put together themselves if they wanted to. It's a weighted average representation of the most popular stocks on after hours. So if you go into the app and you go into the stocks, and you'll be able to see the top stocks. I took all those positions, all the public positions, I dropped them into a spreadsheet, generated a weighted average. There you go.
There you
That's
go.
the
Yeah,
AfterHour
it's
portfolio.
simple. It's just a good kind of benchmark for the community too. That particular one, which is one of the reasons I love following that one. And Hype
Yeah,
Man is
hype
just
man. I've kind
crazy.
of
So
tapered. I've kind of tapered off on for. I'll we'll stick a pin in that, and I'll come back to why I've tapered off on it a little bit. But After Hours has a philosophy behind it, which is actually based in real, actual science, which is wisdom of the masses.
yeah,
So if you ask any one person something about anything, you could be like, "Is this cancer in this picture?" Like it could be anything. It doesn't even have to be something they necessarily know about. Any one person is likely to be very right or very wrong. But as you ask more and more people, the general, like the statistical average answer you get will track towards being correct. And it almost doesn't matter what you're asking about. It's wild.
yeah. No, I agree.
So,
I think that's a
yeah, if you just
very
wait,
common kind of
if you just wait what people are holding in after hours and drop that in a portfolio, you have a fairly generally successful portfolio going on.
no argument there, especially when the community you're asking is so deep into it. It's not like you're just going out and asking the public where you'd get a similar but not the same weighting, but you're going to people who all that they look at stocks all the time, so they're maybe even a little bit more knowledgeable than the general public. So I think it's a
Yeah.
fascinating
And
portfolio.
the other thing that appealed to me was the social aspect of it was, how are we doing collectively? Like we're this trading community that's really focused on success and really focused on results. How are we actually doing? Are we all holding bags? Like it was cool to plug that in and see, yeah, this thing is kind of just tracking up. And in general, the after hours portfolio is incredibly robust. It doesn't seem phased by violent movements in either directions. I describe it as a tractor. It just sits there and lugs along on the side of the highway at 10 miles an hour. And it doesn't matter what is going on, it does that. So for people who are looking to actually stake some money in the market in the like really actually get into starting to trade on their own, after hours is a pretty good way to go about it.
Yeah.
The after hours portfolio, I should say.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, I could sit here and talk to you for hours. I think you're fascinating to have a conversation with, but I do want to start to put a bow on this because we're already 45 minutes in and it feels like it's been 10 just because I enjoy these
Oh,
conversations with you.
yes. I
Um,
did remember I stuck a pin in the hype man and why
yes.
I've kind of tapered that off. And that is like initially it was making money and it was kind of just funny because it was like, haha, it's just making money and it's not using any strategy. And here I am, the chess master, losing to a guy playing checkers. Like it was kind of funny at first. And then I started seeing like the pattern was starting to emerge of one front runner was dragging the entire portfolio into success.
Yes.
And this is something I highly encourage people to do when they test new strategies, segment their portfolio and track the new segment separately. Whatever it is, whatever your strategy is, segment your portfolio and track your strategies separately and see how each segment does, as opposed to saying, well, I started this strategy and then everything went up. Uh, I started noticing that it was one or two front runners were dragging the entire hype man portfolio into profitability. And that indicated it was a flaw. It wasn't great. It didn't leave me with a really good feeling seeing that happen because I was like, this is not generally successful. I'm having 20% success. It just happens to be that 20% success accounts for 55, 5.2 times the amount of money being lost. So it was overall successful because of that.
Hmm.
Um, and lately, since I started diving more into the open interest on trading and really focusing on entering good trades, it has become so counter to the things that I feel make a good trader. I don't feel that I can endorse Hype Man as a strategy in good conscience.
Gotcha. It makes sense. Just why you'd want to kind of go away from it as you're starting to find that edge because they are really just, frankly, the opposite. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
Um,
and I mean, for a little bit, that edge was hype man.
yeah.
I won't lie. Like for a little bit, that edge was hype man, and then before that, my other edge was I had some other things I was looking at that I made a good amount of money on, and I was having pretty good results. It was just the consistency, the accuracy has just gotten higher and higher and higher as I've iterated. It's the same thing. I'm iterating on my strategy, and I have gotten to the point where it's like before I saw maybe 30% increase over 2 months, and now it's like dial a profit. Like I've gotten to the point where I can just kind of pick, um and the accuracy is just insane. So that is the piece where I say emphasize your strategy. If there's a joke video series I watch where a guy has an actual pet chicken and his pet chicken is trading on the commodities market, and his pet chicken is good enough to get a funded account, like it, it's a working strategy. Granted, it's probably just luck, but so far the guy is, as far as I know, still netting profit. Um, it's like a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's like a little tiny segment of his portfolio, but it is funded.
Yeah.
Uh, so whatever your strategy and whatever your edge is, you invest $1,000 into spy anytime grandma mentions politics, and you invest $1,000 into inverted leverage anytime grandpa mentions Vietnam. Like if that's your strategy and it starts pumping money out, keep it up.
Continue.
It make sure it's based on, I mean, I'm using really contrived examples. It should be based on quantitative real things you're seeing and not hunches, and not a superstition gets a little, I'm not thrilled with it, but it should be whatever your strategy is, focus on trading that strategy and not the individual trades, and make sure you are seeing success with your strategy as a whole.
Awesome. I think that's a great piece of advice, which gets me to my last interview question for you before I do some rapid fire questions is what's the best piece of advice you've ever received from an investment perspective?
Best piece of advice I've ever received. Uh, the stock market is predictable. It
There you
is
go.
predictable.
Short and simple. It seems like the more I hang around the traders, the more, at least in the short term, and in the long term, I guess, because that's how I invest, and it seemed to work out well for me too. That it is predictable. So, um,
It's
love it.
highly volatile. These predictions are difficult, but the logical proof is really simple. If it isn't predictable, it's impossible to do as a career. If it is
Yes,
predictable, it's possible to do as a career.
agreed.
And if you want to break down that formal logic more on your own time, you can. But that is the general basis of it: is the stock market is predictable. It is not gambling. If you feel like you're gambling, you're not trading correctly.
Perfect. All right. So I end each interview with fun little rapid fire questions. Just off the top of your head, what is your favorite song?
My favorite song. Oh, this is a constantly rotating one. I would say right now I'm really enjoying Chunks by Flake is one that I is getting a lot of mileage from me.
Awesome. What is the movie that's always in rotation for you? And if you're flipping through the channels and it's on, you stop and you watch the rest of it.
Fight Club. This is a
Fight
movie
Club.
that I have seen like since it came out, and it's interesting watching it in different chapters of my life because what I take away from the movie at each chapter of my life is different. It's also fantastic. I enjoy the story itself.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Perfect. What do you have a favorite quote?
Um, yes. Take
Will you
what you
share?
want and pay for it.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Take what you want and pay for it.
Awesome. Um, If you could spend the day with anyone, dead or alive, who would you spend it with?
Oh, uh, feel a little on the spot, like I'm expected to give this really big, profound answer, and I'm not. I'm
No
going to
worry.
say
It could
Selena
be anyone.
Gomez.
There's no right answer. No wrong answer
Yeah,
either.
yeah, there it is, Selena Gomez.
Selena Gomez. There you go. You heard it here first. All right, this one's specific for you. If you had to full port or bust into any stock right now, what would it be?
If I had the full port or bust into any stock right now, what would it be?
This is
Uh,
not financial advice.
Inverse QQQ leverage.
All right, perfect. Well, I appreciate your time so much. I hope to do one of these with you again. I just find conversations with you and a bunch of the other guys in the Discord fascinating, and I could talk to you guys for hours, but we're at the hour point,
Yeah,
and I wanted to
absolutely.
do 30 minutes. So goes to show how much we can talk
Yeah,
about. But I really appreciate you hopping on here.
yeah. Anybody is welcome to reach out to me at any time. I'm on the Discord server for After Hours, same username as I have on After Hours Full Port or Bust. Feel free to tag me and reach out to me, and I'll try to respond to you.
Awesome. All right. Have a good night, everyone. And appreciate you tuning in. And thanks again.
Thank you.